Yeah, this is an interesting article from a British news website called Off Guardian, and it's about the propaganda against Russia and the return of the Russia bots. And it's called, the title of the article is New Knowledge and the Same Old, Same Old. Most of us in the UK-based alternative media are familiar with the Integrity Initiative by now, a disinformation campaign funded by the Foreign Office through the very dodgy sounding Institute for Statecraft. Their job was to smear people opposing Theresa May's government, be they foreign or domestic. The scale of the scandal hasn't been appreciated by the public thanks to the muteness of the mainstream media, but the Foreign Office using public money to have the intelligence agencies smear the opposition should be enough to bring down any government. Thanks to some excellent work by people in the alternative media and some MPs, the Integrity Initiative's website is currently empty, pending an investigation of data theft. More honestly, it has become an embarrassment. They will likely disappear and then relaunch under a new name, and may indeed already have done so. For now, the Integrity Initiative is done. Less well known in this country is New Knowledge, a direct US-based parallel of the Integrity Initiative. They've been conducting counter-propaganda and social media experiments in the US since 2015, but only just hit the headlines. Who are New Knowledge? A good question. We don't really know. Their website claims to have thousands of volunteers. This may or may not be true. We only have 3 named people. In the executive leadership, Jonathan Morgan, Chief Executive Officer, Ryan Fox, Chief Operating Officer, Renee DeResta, Director of Research. But what a 3 they are. Jonathan Morgan, formerly of the State Department and Brookings Institute, Ryan Fox, formerly of Military Intelligence, Renee DeResta, formerly of Wall Street. The State Department, Military Intelligence and Wall Street, the unholy trinity. Obviously, some questions present themselves. Primarily, can we really trust all those formalities? How did these 3 start the project? How do they know each other? Where does their funding come from? We don't know. What we do know is that somehow these 3 crazy kids got together and decided to use their money. We don't know where they got it from. And their army of volunteers, we don't know who they are, to combat disinformation, in quotes. A noble goal indeed. Let's see how they did it. Why is the New Knowledge in the news? This think tank recently made the headlines in the US because they were caught attempting to manipulate the Alabama senatorial election. This is not a fringe conspiracy theory claim. It was in the New York Times twice. It's now known that New Knowledge took part in various social media based attempts to swing the Alabama Senate race in favour of Democrat Doug Jones. These efforts were varied and odd. They included creating a fake Facebook page, purporting to be a group of Baptists who supported Republican candidate Roy Moore because they believed he would help them ban alcohol statewide. They also encouraged and or created independent candidates from the conservative right in an effort to split the Republican vote. We don't know what impact it had, but Jones did win a very narrow victory over Moore, fewer than 22,000 votes. However, this was by far the most important facet of the story. It involved a scheme to link the Moore campaign to thousands of Russian accounts that suddenly began following the Republican candidates on Twitter. a development that drew national media attention. New Knowledge pretended to be Russians supporting a Republican candidate in order to discredit him by association. They freely admit it. We orchestrated an elaborate false flag operation that planted the idea that the More campaign was amplified on social media by a Russian botnet. So it seems rather than combating disinformation, New Knowledge actively spreads disinformation to achieve political goals. They're staffed by the State Department and intelligence agency veterans, and they spread false information to swing elections. That makes them a psy-op. Psychological operations, psy-op, are operations to convey selected information and indicators to audiences to influence their emotions, motives, and objective reasoning, and ultimately the behaviour of governments, organisations, groups, and individuals. So what was the reaction? Mild, disappointing on multiple levels. Just like the Integrity Initiative coverage in the UK, the wider implications of corruption were completely ignored. The story was always framed in terms of fighting back against the Kremlin, or turning Putin's methods against him. The coverage focused on this being a gift for the Kremlin because it appeared to undermine the claims of Russiagaters. Note, appears to undermine rather than undermines. New Knowledge, NK, of course, denied they were attempting to corrupt democracy in Alabama. Morgan called the Alabama operation an experiment testing the effectiveness of Russian methods. He claimed it was specifically designed to have as little impact as possible. How can you test the effectiveness of something designed to have no impact is unclear to me. No evidence is supplied to corroborate Morgan's version of events. In fact, there's no reason to think this is a one-off at all. This is just the one we know about. Deep state psy-ops are like ants. For every one you see, there's 100 you don't. A single sighting means there's a whole colony nearby. All of the media, national media and pundits resolutely ignored the very large elephant in the very small room. NK have existed since 2015. Before the 2016 presidential election, the New York Times warned these tactics could make the 2020 election ugly. But they don't relate it back to the 2016 election at all. This is not about Russia corrupting our practices or us employing Russian methods. This is evidence that there never was any Russian interference, that Russia's methods are actually our methods. Evidence that Russiagate is a deep state psy-op designed to discredit and control Trump's administration. Rather predictably, none of the media articles takes this angle. And unlike the Integrity Initiative, New Knowledge's website is very much alive and well. Outside of political corruption, there's also levels of financial corruption. New Knowledge CEO Jonathan Morgan is also one of the builders of Hamilton 68, a program which claims to track Russian bot activity. On the one hand, he works for a think tank which fakes bot activity. On the other, he charges people for a product he claims tracks bot activity. There is, of course, a massive opportunity for fraud and corruption there. No kidding. But far from being rebuked, sanctioned or punished in any way, New Knowledge seems to be functioning just as before. In fact, NBC News already ran a story claiming progressive Hawaiian Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is being backed by the Russian propaganda machine. And I've noticed this on the mainstream just in this past week, how she's receiving hit piece after hit piece just because she doesn't want World War III. They cite new knowledge as an expert witness. Conclusion. In summary, a shadowy think tank staffed entirely by State Department and intelligence veterans is using funding from unknown sources and volunteers of unknown identity to pretend to be Russians on social media in order to discredit politicians and political movements in the US. This should be a congressional hearing, but instead it's a back-page "Oh, did you know" story. The following are important questions that need answering. How is the New Knowledge Group funded? Are they paid by the government or military? Who are these thousands of volunteers? Are they the US equivalent of the UK's 77th Brigade, which are a kind of a military propaganda outfit here in the UK? What other elections were targeted by New Knowledge or similar organisations? Just like the Integrity Initiative, New Knowledge works by concealing its true nature, and it's written by Kit Knightley, co-editor of Off Guardian.